Most people think an empath is just someone who feels deeply. That's cute. But the truth is, being an empath is surviving emotional wars nobody else can even see. And if you're watching this right now, there's a high chance your life has already gone through 3 phases, 3 painful transformations, 3 identities, 3 versions of yourself. And phase 2, that's where most empaths almost lose themselves completely. Because phase 1 breaks your heart, but phase 2 breaks your soul. Listen carefully. The first phase of an empath's life is innocence. This is the version of you that trusted everyone. The version that loved hard without fear. You saw good in toxic people. You gave second chances to people who didn't deserve first ones. You stayed loyal even when you were being disrespected. Because your heart was pure. Empaths don't enter the world with armor. They enter with open arms. You were the person checking on everyone else while nobody checked on you. You listened to people vent for hours while your own pain stayed buried inside your chest. You became everybody's emotional home while secretly feeling homeless inside yourself. And the worst part? People loved your energy. Why? But ignored your wounds. See, empaths are dangerous because they can feel what others hide. They notice fake smiles, forced energy, passive aggression, manipulation, jealousy. But during phase 1, they ignore the red flags because they believe love can heal people. That's the mistake. Because eventually, the empath becomes the emotional punching bag for emotionally broken people. You forgive too much. You over-explain. You stay too long. And one day, life teaches you a lesson so painful that your entire personality starts changing. That's when phase 2 begins. The destruction phase. The hardest phase an empath will ever experience. This is where the empath stops recognizing themselves. You become emotionally exhausted. Not because you're weak, but because you carried too many people who never carried you back. Phase 2 is where your nervous system changes. Your trust disappears. Your smile becomes rare. Your energy becomes protective, and nobody understands it. People start calling you cold, but they never saw how many nights you cried in silence. They never saw how many times you stayed loyal while being betrayed behind your back. They never saw how many times you gave your last bit of energy to people who drained you dry. This phase is terrifying because the empath starts waking up, and awakening is painful. You start realizing that some people only loved your usefulness. Some only came to you when they needed healing. Some enjoyed your kindness because it benefited them. And once an empath realizes this, something inside them dies. You stop chasing people. You stop explaining yourself. You stop begging for basic respect. But here's the scary part. During phase 2, empaths isolate themselves from the world. Not because they hate people, but because they finally understand people. They become quieter, more observant, more detached. You answer messages late. You disappear for days. You protect your peace like your life depends on it, because honestly it does. And deep down, you start fighting a battle nobody can see. One side of you still wants love. The other side is terrified of getting hurt again. There was a time when you loved people without hesitation, before the overthinking, before the anxiety, before the emotional walls, before life taught you that having a good heart in a cruel world can become dangerous. That was the first phase of an empath's life, the innocent phase, the phase where your heart was still untouched by betrayal, where you believed loyalty was normal, where you thought people loved the same way you did. And that's why empaths get hurt differently, because they don't love halfway. They don't care halfway. They don't show up halfway. When an empath enters someone's life, they bring their entire soul with them, their attention, their energy, their emotional presence, their patience, their softness. And most people will never understand how rare that truly is. See, empaths were never the loudest people in the room, but somehow they always became the safest people in the room. Strangers opened up to you within minutes. People trauma dumped on you without even realizing why. Friends came to you when their world was falling apart because your energy felt like peace. But nobody ever asked what carrying everyone else was doing to you. That's the hidden curse of being an empath. You become everybody's emotional support system while secretly collapsing inside yourself. You learned very early to ignore your own pain, to suppress your emotions, to smile while mentally exhausted. to comfort people, while needing comfort yourself. And the scary part is you got used to it. You became the person who said, "I'm fine," with a breaking heart. You became the person who listened to everybody else's problems while your own mind was drowning in silence. You became emotionally available to people who would never be emotionally available for you. Because deep down, innocent empaths believe love means sacrifice, so you kept giving. More time, more patience, more forgiveness, more understanding. Even when your soul was screaming for rest, you saw potential in people instead of reality. That's why manipulators loved you, because toxic people are attracted to empaths the same way darkness is attracted to light. They saw your kindness and knew they could survive inside it. They saw your empathy and knew you would keep understanding behavior that should have made you leave. They saw your loyalty and knew you would stay long after the disrespect started. And the heartbreaking part, you didn't even notice it at first. Because innocent empaths always try to understand before they judge. You excuse bad behavior because they've been through a lot. You tolerated disrespect because nobody's personal. Fact, you ignored red flags because people can change, while slowly destroying yourself in the process. That's what makes phase 1 so dangerous. Empaths naturally absorb emotions like a sponge absorbs water, so when they're around emotionally damaged people long enough, they start carrying pain that never even belonged to them. You walked into rooms and instantly felt the tension. You noticed energy shifts nobody else noticed. You could hear sadness hiding behind laughter. You could feel anger hiding behind silence. And because your heart was so sensitive, you tried fixing it all. You wanted everyone around you to feel okay, even if it meant losing yourself. That's why innocent empaths become exhausted so early in life. Not because they're weak, because they care too deeply in a world that rewards emotional numbness. And eventually, people start taking your kindness for granted. Your fast replies become expected. Your loyalty becomes normal. Your emotional support becomes convenient. Nobody notices how much you give until the day you stop giving it. That's when they suddenly call you different. But what hurts an empath the most is not hatred. It's feeling emotionally invisible. We being there for everyone while nobody is truly there for you. Being deeply understood by nobody while deeply understanding everybody else. Feeling like your heart is constantly translating emotions nobody bothers translating for you. And because empaths hate conflict, they stay silent about it. You swallowed emotions that should have been expressed. You internalized pain that should have been released. You blamed yourself for situations that were never your fault. That's another empath trait nobody talks about. You overanalyze everything. A simple tone change can ruin your entire night. A dry text can make you wonder if you did something wrong. Someone acting distant can create emotional chaos inside your mind. Because empaths don't just hear words. They feel energy. And when someone's energy changes toward them, they feel it immediately. That sensitivity becomes overwhelming. You start carrying conversations in your head for hours. Replaying moments, analyzing expressions, questioning yourself. Meanwhile, the other person probably moved on instantly. That imbalance destroys empaths emotionally, because they invest emotionally at levels most people never will. And the painful TR. The youth is, innocent empaths believe everybody has a heart like theirs, until life proves otherwise, until betrayal happens, until abandonment happens, until they discover some people only show love when it benefits them. That realization changes something deep inside an empath, because betrayal doesn't just hurt an empath emotionally. It confuses them spiritually. They can't understand how someone they genuinely loved could intentionally hurt them. They can't understand how people lie so easily, fake loyalty so easily, disappear so easily. Because if an empath loves you, they love you with honesty. They would never intentionally destroy someone emotionally. That's why when it happens to them, it shakes their entire reality. And most empaths don't talk about this pain publicly. They suffer quietly. They disappear quietly, cry quietly, break quietly. The world sees their silence, but never the emotional storm causing it. And during this phase, empaths often become addicted to fixing broken people. Not because they enjoy pain, but because they secretly hope saving others will finally make them feel valuable enough to be loved properly. Read that carefully. A lot of empaths grew up feeling, emotionally unseen, so they developed a habit of earning love through emotional labor, by helping, by understanding. by sacrificing, by staying, even when it hurt them, especially when it hurt them. Because phase 1 empaths confuse suffering with loyalty. They think enduring pain proves love is real. So they tolerate things emotionally healthy people would walk away from immediately. Disrespect, inconsistency, emotional neglect, manipulation. And every time they forgive someone who keeps hurting them, a small piece of them disappears. That's why the innocent phase eventually becomes unbearable. Because one day the empath realizes something devastating. The people they kept saving were never trying to save them back. And that realization hits harder than heartbreak. It feels like waking up emotionally homeless after spending your entire life making other people feel at home inside your soul. Then comes the phase that changes an empath forever, the destruction phase. The phase nobody prepares you for, because this is not normal heartbreak. This is not regular disappointment. This is the moment an empath slowly realizes that the world is far colder than they ever imagined. Once that realization enters their soul, they never become the same again. This phase usually begins silently, not with one betrayal, but with accumulated pain. Years of being emotionally drained. Years of forgiving too much. Years of feeling unseen. Years of giving everything to people who only gave excuses in return. Until one day, something inside the empath finally snaps. Not loudly, quietly. That's the terrifying part. Empaths don't explode first. They endure first. They tolerate emotional neglect longer than they should. They stay loyal longer than they should. They keep understanding people long after those people stopped understanding them. But when an empath reaches emotional exhaustion, the shift is chilling. Because the softest people become the coldest once they realize they were being used. And nobody notices the damage immediately. People only notice the empath becoming distant, quieter, harder to reach, emotionally unavailable. But they never ask what caused it. They never ask how many nights the empath spent crying in silence before becoming this version of themselves. That's what makes phase 2 so lonely. You are grieving a version of yourself knob, wadi even appreciated while you had it. The old you used to answer instantly. Now you stare at messages for hours. The old you used to explain your feelings. Now you stay silent. The old you used to beg people to stay. Now you let them leave without chasing them once. Not because you stopped caring, because caring destroyed you. That's the sentence most people will never understand. Empaths don't become detached because they enjoy isolation. They become detached because their nervous system got tired of surviving emotional disappointment. This phase changes your body too. Your sleep changes. Your energy changes. Your patience disappears. You become mentally exhausted even after simple interactions, because empaths absorb emotional energy deeply. And after years of carrying toxic energy, their soul reaches survival mode. Suddenly crowds feel draining. Conversations feel fake. Small talk becomes unbearable. You start craving silence because silence hurts less than people do. That's when isolation begins. Not dramatic isolation, silent isolation. You disappear slowly. You stop posting. Stop calling first. Stop opening up. Stop telling people what's happening inside your mind. Because experience taught you something painful. Most people only care when your pain entertains them. So you suffer privately. You learn how to cry without making noise. How to smile while emotionally numb. How to sit in rooms full of people while feeling completely alone. And the worst battle happens inside your own mind. Because phase 2 creates emotional confusion. One side of you still wants love, still wants connection, still wants someone genuine. But the other side no longer trusts anybody enough to believe it exists. That internal war destroys empaths psychologically. You begin questioning everything. Was I too kind? Too available? Too forgiving? Too understanding? And slowly, guilt turns into anger. Not loud anger. Silent anger. The kind that changes your personality permanently. You stop tolerating disrespect. Stop giving endless chances. Stop allowing people unlimited access to your energy. And suddenly people accuse you of changing. But what they call changing is actually self-protection. Because phase 2 teaches empaths a brutal truth. Some people were only loyal to your usefulness. That realization cuts deep. You start noticing pattern. You ignored before. People only texting when they need emotional support. People disappearing when you need help. People draining your energy while giving nothing back. And once an empath sees these patterns, they cannot unsee them. That's when emotional withdrawal begins. You become more observant than expressive. You start studying people instead of trusting them immediately. You notice manipulation faster, fake kindness faster, hidden jealousy faster. Pain sharpens intuition. That's why wounded empaths can read energy so accurately, because betrayal trained them. Every heartbreak became emotional intelligence. Every disappointment became awareness. Every lie became another lesson carved into their nervous system. But this awareness comes at a price. You stop feeling emotionally safe anywhere. And honestly, that's one of the darkest parts of phase 2. You start feeling like nobody truly knows you. People know your personality, your humor, your kindness. But nobody knows the emotional chaos inside your mind. Nobody sees how exhausted you are from constantly overthinking everything. Because empaths don't just feel their own emotions, they absorb atmospheres. A room can ruin their mood. A person's energy can drain them instantly. A toxic environment can mentally destroy them without anyone noticing. And after years of this emotional overload, the empath starts shutting down emotionally to survive. This is where numbness appears, the dangerous kind. You stop reacting the way you used to. Things that once broke your heart now just make you tired. You stop arguing because you realize explaining yourself to emotionally immature people is pointless. That silence scares people. Because phase 2 empaths become unpredictable. The same person who once overloved everyone suddenly disappears emotionally. And deep down, they hate it too. That's what nobody talks about. Empaths grieve their own softness. They miss the version of themselves that trusted easily, loved freely, smiled genuinely. But life punished that version too many times, so now they protect themselves differently. You start setting boundaries, and toxic people hate boundaries. You stop answering immediately. Stop overgiving. Stop emotionally rescuing everyone. And suddenly the same people who benefited from your kindness call you selfish. That's how you know phase 2 is working, because healing always disappoints the people who benefited from your self-destruction. Read that again. The destruction phase is painful because it forces empaths to confront something they spent their whole lives avoiding. Not everyone deserves access to your heart. That realization feels brutal to an empath because loving people was always their identity. Helping people, understanding people, being there for people. But phase 2 teaches you that constantly saving others while abandoning yourself is not kindness. It's self-neglect. And eventually, the empath becomes emotionally exhausted from carrying relationships alone. That's when they stop forcing connections, stop chasing closure, stop trying to convince people to value them. You finally realize something heartbreaking. If someone truly cares about you, you won't have to beg for consistency. That truth changes everything. Now your energy becomes selective, your trust becomes rare, your presence becomes earned, and people feel that shift immediately. Some leave because they can no longer manipulate you. Some grow angry because your boundaries expose their selfishness. Some disappear because we're attached to your healing energy, not your actual soul. That's why phase 2 often leaves empaths completely alone for a while. And honestly, that loneliness is necessary, because the empath cannot evolve while constantly surrounded by people draining their spirit. The isolation hurts. The silence hurts. The emotional confusion hurts. But slowly, something powerful begins happening inside the empath. For the first time in their life, they start choosing themselves. And that feels both terrifying and liberating at the same time. And then one day, something changes inside the empath. Not suddenly, not dramatically, quietly. The pain that once controlled them no longer hits the same. The loneliness that once destroyed them starts feeling peaceful. The silence they once feared becomes the safest place they know. This is phase 3, the rebirth, the version of the empath that most people will never fully understand. Because this version was built from emotional survival. Every betrayal taught them something. Every disappointment sharpened their awareness. Every sleepless night transformed them into someone deeper, calmer, and far harder to manipulate. And the scariest part, RT, this empath no longer needs validation to feel valuable. That changes everything. The old empath begged to be understood. The reborn empath understands themselves enough to stop explaining. That alone creates power most people cannot comprehend. You stop chasing people who misunderstand you. Stop fighting for attention. Stop trying to prove your worth to emotionally unavailable people. Because Phase 3 empaths finally realize something life-changing. People who genuinely value you will never make you beg for basic respect. And once that truth enters your soul, your entire energy changes. Now your presence becomes rare, calm, controlled. You no longer react emotionally to everything because pain taught you emotional discipline. That doesn't mean you stopped feeling deeply. It means you finally learned that not every emotion deserves your reaction. That's maturity, and people notice it immediately. There's something intimidating about healed empaths, not because they're aggressive, not because they're arrogant, because they see through people too quickly. Phase 3 empaths can walk into a room and instantly feel hidden tension. They notice fake smiles, forced energy, manipulation, de-ative behavior, not because they're psychic, because suffering trained them to read survival signals. Pain became perception. That's why reborn empaths stop ignoring red flags. The old version gave endless chances. This version watches patterns, because Phase 3 teaches you that words mean nothing without consistency. You stop listening to promises. You start observing behavior. That shift protects your peace, and peace becomes everything to you now. Not attention, not popularity, not validation, peace. You spent too much of your life emotionally drowning inside chaos created by other people. Now even one toxic conversation feels exhausting. That's why reborn empaths become selective with access. Not everyone can reach you anymore. Not everyone deserves your vulnerability anymore. Not everyone gets unlimited pieces of your heart anymore. And honestly, that's healthy, because younger empaths believed setting boundaries was selfish. Mature empaths understand boundaries are survival. You finally realize your energy is sacred. The way you love people is rare. The way you emotionally show up is rare. The way you understand pain without judgment is rare. And once you understand your O-W-N value, you stop giving yourself cheaply to people who treat your soul casually. That's the biggest transformation of Phase 3. You stop abandoning yourself to keep others comfortable. Read that carefully. Because most empaths spent years shrinking themselves for other people, staying quiet to avoid conflict, accepting disrespect to avoid losing people, overgiving to feel emotionally needed. But Phase 3 destroys that habit. Now, if something feels wrong, you leave. If someone feels manipulative, you distance yourself. If your peace gets disrupted constantly, you stop giving access. No long explanations, no begging, no emotional performances, just distance. And distance becomes powerful when it's coming from someone who once tolerated everything. That's why people become shocked by the reborn empath. The same person who once chased everyone suddenly becomes impossible to control emotionally, because they finally understand something dangerous. Attachment is not love. A lot of people confuse being needed with being loved, empaths especially. They became addicted to fixing people because it made them feel emotionally valuable. But Phase 3 teaches you that healthy love not require self-destruction. Real love feels safe, consistent, mutual, not confusing, not draining, not emotionally violent. And once an empath experiences emotional clarity, they can never tolerate toxic attachment the same way again. That's why their standards rise. Not out of ego, out of self-respect. Now energy matters more than appearance. Intentions matter more than words. Consistency matters more than temporary affection. You stop falling for potential. You start paying attention to reality. That alone saves empaths years of suffering. And perhaps the most powerful transformation of Phase 3 is this. The empath stops trying to save everybody. That used to be their identity. Healing people, fixing people, understanding people endlessly. But now they understand something heartbreaking. You cannot heal people who are committed to destroying themselves. And constantly trying to rescue emotionally unavailable people will eventually drown you too. So the reborn empath lets people face the consequences of their own behavior. Not out of cruelty, out of wisdom. Because phase 3 empaths finally understand that protecting your mental health is not selfish. It's necessary. You become more protective of your nervous system, more aware of emotional manipulation, more careful about who gets close to you. And strangely, your silence becomes louder than your words ever were. People feel your absence deeply now. Because phase 3 empaths stop forcing themselves into places where they are not valued. You no longer fear losing people. You fear losing yourself. That's evolution. And the beautiful part is, the reborn empath finally starts healing the relationship with themselves. For the first time in years, you stop blaming yourself for other people's behavior. You stop questioning your worth because someone failed to appreciate it. You stop believing your kindness was weakness, because now you understand. Your softness was never the problem. Giving it to the wrong people was. That realization changes an empath permanently. Now you move differently, slower, calmer, wiser. You stop reacting impulsively because life taught you that protecting your energy matters more than winning arguments. You become emotionally intelligent in a way pain-free people cannot understand. You know how betrayal feels, abandonment feels, emotional neglect feels. So now your heart beats, mess intentional. And ironically, this is the phase where empaths become the most magnetic, because there's something powerful about people who survived emotional darkness without becoming cruel. That energy is rare. The reborn empath still loves deeply, still cares deeply, still feels deeply. But now there's discernment attached to it. Now your heart has standards. Now your loyalty must be earned. Now your energy is protected. And perhaps the most beautiful part of phase 3 is this. You finally stop looking for home inside other people. You become your own safe place.